Be me, Derek, 28 warehouse logistics guy, basically. I move boxes, scan stuff, load trucks. Not glamorous, but it pays decent, and I don't have to talk to people much. Married to Megan, 26. She works as an assistant at a hair salon. We've been together about 3 years, married for 1 when we first started dating. She was honestly great fun, spontaneous, always texting me first, the kind of girl who would show up at my place with pizza and just hang out. No drama, no weird rules, no mind games. I remember thinking I finally found someone who actually liked me for me, not for what I could do for her, or how I made her look, just me. The proposal was simple, nothing crazy. She cried, said yes, posted it everywhere. Her mom loved me. Her friends thought I was solid, everything felt right. Fast forward to about 6 months after the wedding, something starts shifting. Can't really pinpoint the exact moment, but it was gradual, like watching paint dry, except the paint is your marriage, slowly getting weird. Megan gets really into podcasts, not true crime or comedy or anything. Normal feminist podcasts about relationships and power dynamics. Every time I come home, she's got earbuds in, nodding along to some lady explaining why men need to do more emotional labor. At first, I didn't care if people listened to stuff. Whatever. Then she starts bringing it into conversations like I'd come home after a 10-hour shift, dead on my feet, and she'd want to have a talk about how I'm not being emotionally present enough. I'm standing there in steel toes that smell like cardboard and sweat, trying to figure out what emotionally present means. She starts using words I've never heard in a normal conversation, deconstructing, unpacking, holding space. Centering her experience felt like she swallowed a textbook and was slowly throwing it up at me one phrase at a time. But okay, fine, I love her. I want this to work. So I listen, I nod, I try to understand. Around this same time, her friend from the salon starts becoming a big influence. This girl is constantly sending Megan articles and videos about toxic masculinity, in marriages clips of women on social media, talking about how their husbands don't do enough. Megan starts watching these on the couch every night. I'd sit down next to her and she'd angle the screen so I could see like she wanted me to absorb it too. One time, she literally paused a video, looked at me, and said that the woman in the clip was making a really good point about how men use silence as control. I had been quiet because I was eating a sandwich, but sure. I was apparently weaponizing silence with a mouthful of turkey. Things start changing in a more concrete way. After that, Megan introduces what she calls structure to our relationship. At first, it's small stuff she wants me to ask, before initiating physical contact, like even a hug. I thought she was joking. She was not joking. So now I'm standing in my own kitchen, asking my wife if I can put my arm around her. Felt weird, but I figured maybe she just needs space or had a bad day or something. I adapted. Then the lists start, actual lists. She makes a shared note on her phone with tasks I need to complete each week. Not chores like take out the trash or fix the sink. Emotional tasks, stuff like write a journal entry about your privilege, or read this article and tell me what you learned, or do an emotional check-in with me every evening where you ask how I'm feeling, and then share your own feelings. I'm coming home from loading trucks for 10 hours, and now I have homework the first time I didn't. Finish everything on the list. She went completely cold, not angry exactly, just gone like someone flipped a switch. No talking, no eye contact, sleeping on the far edge of the bed. Total silence for almost 2 full days. I kept asking what was wrong, and she just said, if you don't know, I'm not going to explain it. Classic. After the silence ended, she finally told me I hadn't done the emotional labor she asked for, and it showed that I didn't value her needs. So I apologized, and I did the list, all of it. Even wrote a paragraph about masculinity and how I was going to work on being a better partner. She read it, said it was a good start, and things went back to relatively normal for about a week. Then the list got longer. New items kept appearing now. I had to listen to one of her podcasts and discuss it with her. Had to compliment her in a specific way, that wasn't about appearance, but about her intelligence or strength, had to plan one meaningful activity per week that showed I was investing in us, all of this on top of my actual job, where I'm physically exhausted every single day. The thing that really got me was how she framed it. According to Megan, this was all totally normal. This was what healthy relationships looked like. She said most men just don't want to put in the work, and that's why marriages fail. And I believed her, or at least I wanted to believe her, because the alternative was admitting that something was really wrong. Here's where Megan's personality starts getting harder to deal with. She was always a little dramatic, but it used to be kind of charming, like she'd gasp loudly if she saw a cute dog or get overly excited about small things. But now the drama went dark. Everything became a crisis. I bought 2% milk instead of oat milk. One time, and she turned it into a 40-minute argument about how I never listened to her and how this was a pattern of disrespect. I literally stood there holding a gallon of milk while she cried over milk. Another time I forgot to like one of her posts on social media, didn't even see it honestly. I was at work. She didn't speak to me for 2 days. When she finally did, she said my silence online was a form of emotional neglect. I pulled up my screen time and showed her. I was on my phone for maybe 20 minutes. That whole day didn't matter. The evidence didn't matter. What mattered was how it made her feel, and how it made her feel was always bad, always my fault. Every single time there was no winning with Megan anymore. If I agreed with her, she'd say I was just performing and not actually understanding. If I disagreed, she'd say I was being defensive and that my reaction proved her point. If I stayed silent, she'd say I was shutting down emotionally. If I tried to explain myself, she'd say I was centering my own feelings, literally a no-exit maze. I started walking on eggshells in my own apartment, checking her mood before I said anything, reading her face when I walked through the door to see if today was going to be a good day or a disaster. Most days, it was somewhere in between. Leaning toward disaster, the social media stuff made it worse. Megan had her blog and her stories, and she'd post these vague things that were obviously about me. Stuff like when your partner can't do the bare minimum with a little emoji face, or when you realize you're the only adult in the relationship. Her followers would respond with things like, "You deserve better, queen, and know your worth," and dump him. And she'd show me these comments, not as a threat, exactly, but more like evidence. Like, "See, everyone agrees with me, so clearly you're the problem." I'd just stare at the screen and nod, because what else do you say? Some stranger on the internet with a sunset profile picture thinks I'm trash, based on one side of the story. Cool. The worst part was the affection thing, not just physical, but emotional too. Everything became conditional. If I did the list, if I had the right attitude, if I said the right things, if I performed well enough, then maybe she'd be warm to me. Maybe she'd sit next to me on the couch. Maybe she'd laugh at something I said. Maybe she'd act like she actually liked me. But if I slipped up even slightly, it all went away. Like a faucet she could turn off. I started feeling like I was on some kind of probation. Every day was a performance review, and the metrics kept changing without warning. One week she cared about the journal entries. Next week, those didn't matter anymore. And now it was about how I spoke to her in front of her friends. I couldn't keep up. Nobody could have kept up, but I kept trying, because I thought that's what you do when you love someone. You try harder. You push through. You don't give up. At least that's what I thought at the time. So months go by like this. I'm basically running on fumes, work all day. Come home, try to meet whatever new standard Megan has set, fail, deal with the fallout, sleep. Repeat lost about 15 pounds. I didn't need to lose. My appetite was gone. I'd eat lunch at work, and that was pretty much it. Started getting headaches almost every day. My mood at work was flat. I'd just go through the motions, load the trucks, scan the pallets, clock out. Didn't talk to anyone more than I had to one of the guys I work with. Older dude. Been at the warehouse for years. Noticed something was off. He didn't push it at first, just kind of checked in every now and then, asked if I was all right. I'd say, yeah, just tired. He'd nod and let it go. But one day during break, we were sitting outside and he just looked at me and said something like, "You look like a man who's trying to keep a sinking boat floating with a coffee mug." I kind of laughed, but it wasn't funny. He told me a bit about his own situation. Married 7 years. Did everything he could to make it work. His wife kept raising the bar, and he kept jumping higher and higher until he physically and emotionally couldn't jump anymore. And when he stopped, she told him he was lazy and boring and filed for divorce, took a chunk of his savings and most of his energy. He said the thing that stuck with him the most was realizing he was never actually going to be enough, not because he was lacking, but because the game was designed so he couldn't win. He told me something that hit different, said I wasn't a husband in Megan's eyes. I was a project, something she was trying to fix and redesign into her ideal version, and the real me, the actual person, was never going to be good enough because she wasn't in love with me. She was in love with the idea of molding someone. I didn't say anything after that, just sat there looking at the parking lot, but I couldn't stop thinking about it that night. I came home. Megan was already in a mood, I could tell from the second I opened the door. She was on the couch with her arms crossed and her phone face down, which was always a bad sign. Before I even put my bag down, she started in on me, said I hadn't responded to her text during the day. She'd sent me some long message about how she needed an emotional check-in, and I didn't reply for hours. I was unloading a truck. I told her that she said that wasn't an excuse, and that if I really cared, I would make time. Then she said she needed the check-in right now, and something in me just didn't respond the way it usually did. Normally, I'd scramble, apologize, sit down, do the check-in, ask how she's feeling, share my feelings, validate her, perform. But this time I looked at her and I just said I'm tired. And not tonight, 4 words, you'd think I'd slapped her. She went from annoyed to full meltdown in about 30 seconds, crying, saying I was emotionally abandoning her, calling me an abuser, saying she always knew I'd show my true colors. Eventually, the volume kept going up. I didn't match it, didn't yell back, didn't argue, didn't defend myself. I just stood there and then walked to the bedroom, changed into gym clothes, put on my sneakers, and went to a gym near our place that I'd driven past 100 times, but never actually gone into. Signed up that night, spent an hour just doing whatever treadmill, some machines I barely knew how to use, sat in the stretching area for a while. It wasn't even about working out, really. It was about being somewhere that wasn't that apartment. Somewhere nobody was grading me. When I got home, Megan was in bed, lights off. Facing the wall, silent treatment had already started. I showered and went to sleep on the couch, and for the first time in I don't know how long I actually slept. Well, not great, but better than I had in months. Woke up the next morning feeling slightly less like garbage, went to work, did my shift, went to the gym again after came home, made myself dinner separately. Megan was watching something on her laptop and didn't acknowledge me. I ate, cleaned up, went to the couch. Fell asleep, same thing the next day, and the next I wasn't doing it to make a point or punish her. Something had just turned off inside me like a pilot light that had been barely flickering for months, finally went out. I didn't have it in me to try anymore. The lists stayed on the shared note on her phone. I stopped checking them. The podcast episodes she'd send me sat unread. The journal entries stopped. The emotional check-ins stopped. All of it just stopped. And I didn't feel guilty about it. That was the strangest part. I expected to feel terrible, like I was failing, but I felt lighter. Like someone had taken a backpack full of rocks off my shoulders that I'd been wearing so long, I forgot it was there. The gym became my thing every day after work. No exceptions. I started actually learning the equipment. Following some basic program, I found online eating better because I was cooking for myself and could make what I wanted without it becoming a debate. Sleeping on the couch became normal. And honestly, the couch was fine. My headaches went away. My appetite came back. The guys at work noticed my coworker, the older one, saw me eating actual lunch again, and just gave me a nod. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Meanwhile, Megan went through phases. The first week was pure anger. She was furious, not in a loud, confrontational way, but in that cold, seething way, where every interaction felt like touching a live wire. She'd make comments under her breath, slam cabinets a little too hard, leave her phone open on articles about narcissistic husbands, where I could see them. Her social media went into overdrive, posting stories every day about toxic partners and emotional unavailability. One of them said something like, "When a narcissist shows you who they really are, believe them," with a red flag emoji. Her followers ate it up, heart emojis, supportive comments, the usual. I saw the stories because my phone still showed them. I just scrolled past, didn't react, didn't bring it up, didn't care. And I think that's what started getting to her, the not caring part. Because Megan's whole system was built on my reactions when she went cold. I was supposed to panic when she cried. I was supposed to rush in when she posted passive-aggressive stuff. I was supposed to feel ashamed, but now none of it was landing. I was just existing in the same space as her, being polite, not hostile, but completely disconnected, like a roommate who happens to share a lease the second week. Is when I noticed the shift. Megan started looking at me differently. Not with anger anymore, more like confusion, maybe even something close to fear. I was coming back from the gym one evening, and she was sitting at the kitchen table doing nothing, just sitting there. When I walked in, she looked up, and there was this weird expression on her face, like she was trying to figure out a puzzle. I said, "Hey, got some water." Went to shower, normal stuff. But I could feel her watching me. A few days later, she tried a different approach, came into the room while I was folding laundry and started crying, said I'd changed, and she didn't recognize me anymore, said she was scared and didn't know what was happening to us. Part of me, some old buried part, felt something when she cried, but the rest of me remembered that crying was a tool for her. It had been a tool for a long time, every argument, every disagreement. The tears would come out, and suddenly I was the villain who made her cry, and the whole point of the conversation got lost. So I looked at her and said, "I'm sorry, you're scared," and then I kept folding laundry. She stood there for a minute, waiting for more. There wasn't more. She left the room. After that came the anger phase again, but shorter this time. A couple days of door slamming and cold shoulders. Then something I genuinely didn't expect. Megan tried being nice. Like, out of nowhere, she made dinner one night. Actual dinner. Not just for herself. Set the table, lit a candle, the whole thing. I came home and was confused. Sat down, ate with her. Said, "Thank you." She tried to start a conversation about us. Asked if we could talk about where things went wrong. I said, okay, but the thing was, she didn't want to actually talk about what went wrong. She wanted to talk about what I was doing wrong and how I needed to come back to how things were. By how things were, she meant the system, the lists, the check-ins, the performance. She said she was willing to forgive me for pulling away if I committed to doing the work. Again, forgive me. I almost laughed. Didn't, though, just told her. I didn't think going back to that was going to work for me. She asked what I meant. I said I was done with the lists and the tasks and the idea that I had to earn basic affection from my own wife. She stared at me like I'd spoken in a different language. Then the tears came again. I finished eating, washed my plate, and went to the gym. Around this time, something else happened that threw Megan off. She tried the one thing that had always worked without fail in the past. Physical attention. After months of using it as a reward for good behavior, she suddenly flipped and was the one trying to initiate. I turned her down politely. No drama. Just said I wasn't in the mood. The look on her face was something I'll probably never forget. Total shock. Like it literally did not compute. She didn't know what to do with a no. In her mind, that card was unbeatable. She'd been holding it back for months as leverage, and now she played it, and it meant nothing. After that, she kind of spiraled for a bit more. posting more stories, more vague public commentary about her marriage. Her friend from the salon got involved too. I know because Megan told me her friend said I was exhibiting classic narcissistic withdrawal patterns, which is a pretty impressive diagnosis from someone who does shampoos for a living. But whatever Megan's friend apparently also suggested, she write a longer post about what was happening, something about sharing her truth and holding me accountable publicly. So, Megan wrote this big post about how her husband had emotionally abandoned her, how she'd done everything right and tried to build a healthy relationship, but her partner refused to grow. It was long and dramatic and full of therapy language that she'd picked up from her podcasts. She posted it, and for about a day it worked. Comments poured in, women telling her she was brave, women saying they'd been through the same thing, a few telling her to get a divorce lawyer immediately. But then something unexpected happened. People started pushing back. Some of the comments, mostly from other women actually, started asking questions like, did you ever ask him how he feels? Or what does he say when you talk to him about this? Or have you considered that maybe the lists and tasks are part of the problem? One comment said something along the lines of, it sounds like you were treating your husband like an employee, and now you're shocked he quit. Megan deleted the post within hours. I only knew about it because she left her laptop open, and I saw the draft still in her notes. After the post disaster, things got quiet between us. Not the angry quiet from before, a different kind, heavy like the air before a storm, except the storm had already passed. And this was just the empty gray after Megan stopped posting as much, stopped trying the different tactics. I think she was running out of ideas. Or maybe she was starting to realize that none of her tools worked on someone who had genuinely stopped caring about the game. That's the thing about systems of control. They only function if the other person is participating. The second someone opts out, the whole structure collapses. And I had opted out not with a speech or an ultimatum, just quietly, by existing differently. A few weeks went by in this weird limbo. We were technically still married, still living together, but the relationship was hollow. I was spending more time at the gym, picked up some reading, started reconnecting with a friend I hadn't talked to in over a year. Megan was doing her own thing, working at the salon, hanging out with her friend. Still listening to her podcasts, but with the door closed now, one night I was lying on the couch and I realized something. I wasn't unhappy anymore. Not happy either, but the constant dread was gone. The knot in my stomach that used to form on my drive home from work had dissolved. I wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes to see if she'd sent something I needed to respond to. I wasn't rehearsing conversations in my head, trying to predict what would upset her. For the first time in a long time, I was just existing without someone grading my existence. And it felt good. That realization is what made the decision for me. Because if the best I'd felt in years was when I stopped engaging with my marriage, then the marriage was already over. I'd just been too tired and too deep in it to see that. I started looking into the process, talked to a guy at work who'd been through it, and got the basics figured out, what I needed, what to expect. What the timeline looked like. I wasn't angry about it, wasn't bitter. Just done like finishing a book you stopped enjoying halfway through, but kept reading because you felt like you were supposed to. The day I decided to actually do it felt ordinary. Went to work, did my shift, went to the gym, came home. Megan was in the living room watching something on her laptop. I went to the bedroom and pulled out a bag. Not a big one, just enough for clothes and essentials. Started packing. She must have heard me moving around because she came to the doorway and watched for a second before asking what I was doing. I told her I was leaving and that I was going to file for a divorce. She just stood there, didn't move, didn't cry right away, just stood in the doorway with her arms at her sides like she was buffering. Then she asked why, which honestly was almost funny in a horrible way after everything. After the lists and the silent treatments and the public posts and the emotional grading system and the months of being treated like a malfunctioning appliance, She needed to ask why. I told her the truth. Told her she never asked me to be a better partner. What she asked was for me to earn the right to be next to her. Told her I spent 3 years trying to qualify for something that should have just been there. Basic warmth, basic kindness. The feeling that someone actually likes having you around told her that loving someone shouldn't feel like a performance review. She started crying, then real crying. Not the tactical kind, at least. I think it was real hard to tell anymore, said she could change, and that she knew she'd been too hard on me, and that she was willing to work on it. I just looked at her and told her I'd believed that for the first 2 years. Then I picked up my bag and left. Drove to my coworker's place. He'd already told me I could crash there if I needed to. Didn't even have to explain when I showed up. He just opened the door, moved some stuff off the spare bed, and handed me a beer first night. There was strange quiet in a way I wasn't used to. No tension in the air, no eggshells on the floor, no notifications to dread. I just sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall for a while. Then I slept deeply, like my body had been waiting for permission to actually rest. The next few days were a blur of logistics and paperwork I filed, got the process started, tried to keep things as clean as possible. Megan called a lot at first texts, 2 long ones. Paragraph after paragraph, some were angry, calling me selfish and emotionally stunted. Some were sad, saying she missed me and couldn't sleep. Some were manipulative, saying she'd already found a therapist and was changing, and I owed it to the marriage to at least try. I read them, but didn't respond to most. When I did respond, I kept it short and factual, just about logistics, the apartment, paperwork stuff. She showed up at my coworker's place once, knocked on the door looking like she hadn't slept, asked me to come outside and talk. My coworker gave me a look, like you don't have to, but left it up to me. I went outside. She talked for about 20 minutes about how she'd been reflecting and realized she'd been too influenced by the content she was consuming. Said her friend had been pushing her in a bad direction. Said the podcasts had warped her perspective on what a healthy relationship looked like. And honestly, some of it might have been true. Maybe she genuinely was reflecting, but it was too late. Not in a cruel way. Not because I wanted her to suffer, just because whatever was between us had been stretched past the point of repair trust. Once it's gone at that level. Doesn't come back because someone had a revelation. I told her I appreciated her saying that, but my decision was made. She cried. I went back inside. That was the last real conversation we had face to face. After that, everything went through the process. The divorce took about 4 months to finalize. Megan contested some things early on, but eventually stopped fighting it. I think reality hit her. When the papers were actually in front of her during those 4 months, I didn't see her much heard, through mutual acquaintances that she was posting. A lot. Went through a phase of writing long posts about how men aren't ready for strong women, how society doesn't prepare men for emotionally intelligent partners. Stuff like that got a lot of engagement from the usual crowd women telling her she was brave. Men in her comments getting attacked, the standard cycle. But the posts got less frequent over time. I don't know if she ran out of steam or if the attention stopped being enough. One person who still followed her told me she posted something late one night that was different from the others. Not angry, not blaming, just something short about how the apartment felt empty. Deleted it the next morning. I didn't feel good hearing that. I didn't feel vindicated or satisfied, just tired. The whole thing was just exhausting from start to finish. My coworker let me stay at his place for about 2 months before I found my own spot, small studio. Nothing fancy. But it was mine, quiet walls, no shared notes, no lists on anyone's phone, no passive-aggressive messages disguised as personal growth. I kept going to the gym. It wasn't about transformation or revenge, body, or any of that. It was just the one thing I'd built for myself when everything else was falling apart. And I didn't want to lose it. Started sleeping normally again, eating normally. My headaches were completely gone. The guys at work noticed the difference. I was talking more, not a lot, but more than the ghost I'd been for the past year. My coworker and I would eat lunch together most days. He never brought up the divorce unless I did, which I appreciated more than he probably knows. One afternoon, we were sitting outside and he said something that stuck with me. Said the hardest part about his own divorce wasn't the loss. It was admitting that he'd been unhappy for years and had just called it love because he didn't know what else to call it. I felt that looking back at my marriage, I can see it clearly now. What I thought was love was actually just effort constant. Exhausting, one-directional effort. I was pouring everything into a container with a hole in the bottom and wondering why it never filled up. Megan wasn't evil. I don't think she woke up every day planning to make my life miserable, but she built a system where my worth as a partner was measured by my compliance. And when I complied, she moved the target, and when I stopped complying, she panicked because the system broke. She didn't miss me when I pulled away. She missed the control, the version of me that jumped when she said jump and apologized. When she said apologize, that's not love, that's management. And I'm done being managed. It's been a while now since the divorce was finalized. My life is quiet, simple, in a way that I used to think meant something was missing. But now I realize the noise was the problem. I go to work. I go to the gym. I cook. I read. I hang out with a few people who don't require me to perform for their approval. Do I think about Megan? Sometimes not with anger, not with longing, more like you'd think about a place you used to live that you'd never go back to familiar, but distant. Someone asked me the other day if I'd get married again. I said I didn't know, and I meant it. Not in a bitter way. More in a way where I realized I'm okay, not knowing for 3 years. I lived in a world where every answer had to be the right one, or there'd be consequences. Now, I can just say, I don't know, and nobody punishes me for it. That's the part people don't talk about. Everyone focuses on the big dramatic moments, the fights, the crying, the walking out. But the real damage was in the small stuff. The daily grind of being told you're not enough. The slow erosion of your confidence until you genuinely believe that you need to earn basic human warmth from the person who promised to love you. That stuff doesn't leave bruises, but it hollows you out, and when you finally step out of it, you realize how empty you'd become and how much space there is to fill with something better. I'm not a self-help success story. I'm not going to tell anyone what to do with their relationship. But if you're reading this and you recognize any of it, the lists, the silent treatments, the feeling of being on permanent probation in your own home, just know that the exit exists. You're allowed to use it, and the silence on the other side isn't loneliness, it's peace anyway. That's my story. Nothing profound. Nothing revolutionary, just a guy who tried his best until his best wasn't enough, and then realized maybe his best was never going to be enough because the measurement was broken. And that's okay, because the only score that matters now is mine, and I'm doing all right. Be me. 28 warehouse guy divorced, finally sleeping through the night could be worse. Last thing I'll say. Megan texted me a few weeks after the divorce was final. Short message, said she'd been going to actual therapy, not podcast therapy. Real therapy. Said she was starting to understand some things about herself that she hadn't seen before. Said she was sorry. 2 words, not a paragraph of justification, not a lecture about emotional labor, just, sorry. I read it and sat with it for a while, then typed back thanks. And I hope it helps, and I meant it. Genuinely hoped she'd figure out whatever was going on inside her, not for my sake, for hers, because whatever she was looking for in me, she was never going to find in another person. That's something you've got to build on your own. I know because I'm building it now, too. One quiet day at a time. But at least my days are mine, and nobody's keeping score anymore. End.